Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSPmagazine Podcast Radio. You're about to listen to a new Redefining Technology podcast. Standing on 2 feet, having dexterous hands, developing a language that allows us to communicate, and the ability to understand abstract concepts. These are all part of the equation of humanity. Still, it is the capacity to create tools and advance the technology that has allowed us to thrive on this planet, and maybe on others. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com.
CrowdSec, the collaborative and open source cybersecurity solution. Analyze behaviors, respond to attacks, and share signals across the community for free. Let's make the internet safer together. Learn more at crowdsec.net.
Marco.
Sean.
I'm feeling divided.
You're the great divide?
The great divide? I'm great at something then. I'm the great divider. This particular conversation has been a few months in the works, and we finally pulled it together, and now is the perfect time to have this chat about the Rural Tech Fund. And we have Chris Sanders on and Liz Wharton on. Thank you both for joining us to tell us about what you're doing to bridge the digital divide with technology.
Thanks for having us. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. This is a hot topic. I'm glad that Sean, you started with the divide, because we talked about data divide, democratization, digital divide, and technology. In my opinion, from a societal perspective, should be the big unifier, the one that level things. And I think it took a little bit, but I have the feeling we are.
Division's unification?
Yeah, it's a,
that's division is unification.
That's humanity. We always do some dichotomy here and there, but let's see if we can get the gap getting a little bit closer. And I know Liz and Chris, you're doing so much about it. But first of all, how about to hear who you are, and then you tell us what you do. So Liz, let's start with you, which you're not new to the show.
Well, thank you. No, and really the heavy lifting is being done by Chris. He created a spark, but I have the privilege, in addition to my day job in helping run a startup, of volunteering both time, money, energy, and guilt tripping everyone else I know to do the same to the Rural Tech Fund. So I, about a year ago, joined their brand new board and have been doing my best to help move forward Chris's work. So I'm going to let him take the big reveal, so to speak. But yeah.
That's a lot of pressure now.
Not new to ITSP either, but we're happy to have you on for this.
I'm glad to be here. So for folks that don't know me, I'm Chris Sanders. I'm the director, kind of founder of the Rural Technology Fund. I know this is kind of a tech-oriented podcast, and I think folks who know me know about the Rural Tech Fund. If they don't know about the RTF, they may know me from some of my other work. I'm also a tech author. I wrote a few books: Practical Packet Analysis, Applied Network Security Monitoring, and Building Intrusion Detection Honeypots. And that's often the thing that bridges people who might meet me in a tech space to the work with the RTF.
So yeah.
Well, let's just get into it, Chris. Oh, go ahead, Liz. Bad?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Chris is always he's just so humble about the work he's been doing. I mean, if you've been to any of the B-sides or any of the events down in Georgia or around there, you have probably run into either a fundraiser or the stickers or the swag.
Well, let's
I have to get my hands on the stickers.
let's reveal more then. Come on. Don't be
Yeah.
too humble,
right.
especially when it comes to.
Stick
They're
it to
always
it.
they're always
Stick it to it.
within reach. I can stick it right on the camera out there. But I never go far without the RTF stickers around.
I was gonna say that's the camera covers are an entirely different privacy discussion, but really one of the best ways to highlight where the work is. And by the way, they through RTF, we've touched students and classrooms and teachers in all 50 states, and have really where best thing I got to do was Chris sent me a request. So teachers reach out to Rural Tech to Chris and ask, hey, we've got a need. Either our students aren't able to access, they want to learn something. Maybe they don't have the money through the school district to buy the licenses for a platform. Maybe they can't afford a 3D printer. Or in my area of fun, I got to take a bunch of micro drones up to Toccoa, Georgia, which if I admitted I had a lead foot, would be about an hour and a half drive. But sure, we'll go with that. I definitely went the speed limit, went almost to the state border to a school that of a classroom of third graders, and brought with me the map of the airport, the airfield, and some drones, and said, okay, how many of y'all have ever been on an airplane? And out of 30 students, maybe 4 raised their hand. And I was like, okay, well, how many of y'all have ever been to an airport? Not that you flew, but, and it's like started this conversation and brought into context for these students who would have had no, who knows how long before they would have to say, look, these are some of the things that we do with technology at airports, with aircrafts. Here's what unmanned systems look like. Come fly them, come, touch, feel, get to know this space and just have this experience. And all because teacher reached out, I think with that classroom, we'd also donated a 3D printer, taught them how to use it, teaching them how to do stuff. But if you think of all the areas outside of metropolitan areas throughout the US, and, not just the mainland, 48, there's some big gaps. I mean, we joke about politics being different depending on where you are. Just imagine these children who are trying to learn where they don't have necessarily access to broadband, to Wi-Fi that we take for granted. Or one of the new projects that they launched this year was assistive technology. So maybe they have a computer, maybe they have stuff at home, but they can't use it as you or I would. So, sorry. If you can't tell, I love this, and I will get on a soapbox. And how many hours did you say we have today?
We have 5 hours to record.
Excellent.
So
Now,
you bring all the stories.
And honestly,
Go ahead, Chris.
This is great. And what Liz mentioned in describing this process of her going to Toccoa and to speaking at this kind of career day thing. First of all, that's exactly why when I was thinking about creating this advisory board, Liz was my first call, because 1, she cares about this issue. And 2, she's willing to kind of just drop everything on somewhat short notice and bring a bunch of drones and show them to kids and teach them and introduce them about technology. And 3, she's good at a lot of things I'm not, which is what you want in an advisory board. You want people to bring that skills and expertise. So I'm really glad to have her helping us pursue this mission. But, Sean, I think one of the things you mentioned kind of right at the top was travel and being on both coasts. And, I was born in very rural West Kentucky, a little town called Mayfield. I think until maybe about last year, probably nobody had ever really heard of Mayfield unless you're from there. Unfortunately, it was hit with a pretty devastating tornado, made national news, and that's where a lot of people ended up hearing about Mayfield. Not the way I wanted people to learn about my hometown, but nevertheless, I was born there, grew up there, but I've been very fortunate because of my career to be able to travel quite a bit, certainly internationally, but definitely within the U.S., most of the states, most corners of the country. And throughout my travels, pretty quickly when I was fairly young, I really recognized this thing that I say a lot, that talent is distributed equally, but opportunity is not, right? There's a lot of talented kids with lots of potential in all of these places. whether it's Mayfield, Kentucky, or any of these other little small towns. And honestly, I don't care what urban or suburban environment someone lives in, they're probably no more than half an hour, 45 minutes from someplace that's actually pretty darn rural, right? So these aren't places that are geographically just in crazy distance from a lot of people. But there's a lot of a lot of talent in that area, a lot of kids who have potential to do a lot of great things and deserve those opportunities, right? And that's a lot of the reason the Rural Technology Fund exists. I have a distinct memory of sitting in my high school gym when I was a senior. It was Honors Day. That's where they come in and they announce and award scholarships to kids who are going and doing different things. So I remember sitting there and I was interested in computers. I was kind of the only kid who did that sort of thing at the time in my school. Knew that's what I wanted to do. And, I'm sitting there and they announce scholarships for people who are going into business or education or agriculture, basically every subject you could think of, except computers, except technology, right? There was nothing at that time. And that's gotten a little bit better. But when you think about it, well, why would there have been a scholarship for that at the time? Who's going to offer it? There are no technology companies in the area. That's who you expect to do it. A lot of the other companies in the area were really focused on their niche, the thing that they do. They weren't really focused on tech. So it wasn't really within their means or kind of idea space to do that. So it just wasn't going to happen. And what was happening in Mayfield, Kentucky at the time is what was happening in all the rural areas. Every one of those rural areas had one of me. They had one of me who wanted to get into tech and do those different things. And it's honestly just thanks to a few teachers who really cared about me, some persistence, some privilege, and some luck that I was able to do some successful things and get into tech and make a career and be successful at it. So it's that memory that kind of led me to start the Rural Tech Fund. That memory of sitting on an Honors Day and there just being nothing for me, very little opportunity. And that was when I graduated high school. And then in 2008, we started it. And the very first thing we were initially, before we were working within schools or with teachers or with librarians, was a scholarship fund, just scholarships for kids from rural areas who are pursuing tech in kind of their secondary education.
So how do you work with the other states, with other I mean, I look at the map. If you go on the website, you can see the map. You're, in a lot of places, 800 plus school, 150,000 students, 50 states. Is that another you there, your clone, or your other person that is like you?
Are you wearing your shoes down to the nuts? Or what's going on?
How do you replicate what you do in a small area in another rural area?
Yeah, so for a long time, it was just me. We started in 2008, and for several years, it was just scholarships. And I always said from the beginning, we wanted to measure the impact that the fund had by the number of students that we help, right? That's why we still do that on the website, as we count the number of students who we've reached. So the first year it was 1, the second year it was 2, then it was 4, then it was 8, and then it was just scholarships for a while. And then we really started focusing on kind of expanding that, growing that. And really, again, it just me at the time. And so basically I just put it out there and said, if you are a rural teacher in a classroom and want to teach your kids about some form of computer technology, that's somewhat broad. It could be computer science, IT, network security, even robotics, 3D printing. If you want to do any of those things, here's a form to fill out. Tell me what you want to do. And if it's a good idea, I'll work with you and we'll give you some money and help you do it. And that's, putting something like that out there is really, people think, well, that, I would just have tons and tons of those applications. Not so much. Like, it takes a long time to connect with these folks in rural areas, right? That's a whole big part of the work of this job, is finding the places and making sure that those teachers can connect with us and know where to find us. And, a Google search only works so well sometimes, right? So a lot of work into that. But yeah, for the most part, that was me working with people directly for many, many years. A few years ago, I realized that could certainly keep doing that. It's somewhat of a similar pace, but to grow the thing, the organization needed to grow. So with that, a little over a year ago, I hired Claire Copps-Williams, who is our COO. So she was kind of our first full-time employee. Along with that, that's when we set up the advisory board. A lot of great folks on there, Liz, of course, included. We kind of named one of our existing volunteers as our CTO, grew the organization that way. And have a couple of volunteers working with us as well. So that's basically a long-winded way of saying, yes, for a long time, it was me, and I had to replace my shoes every couple of months because the soles were certainly getting worn down. Now, a lot more people helping in a lot of unique ways, and we're able to do a lot more.
And I loved your story earlier, Liz, and it kind of triggers a thought for me of, especially when we have this kind of conversation of what's possible. Oftentimes, they don't even know what's possible if they're on the other side of the divide, right? Where they can't access information easily and readily and get to an airport to see it, to watch planes and helicopters and drones and whatever else. So I'm wondering how do we bridge that? How are you helping to bridge that, perhaps, so that they know what to ask you for when they say, here's something we want to do. We believe there's an opportunity in this area because of X, Y, and Z, and this technology will help us to not just this individual student, but perhaps our community and our city or whatever.
And I love some of the work when Chris is connected with a school and with a teacher. It's not this isolated kind of like, here you go, thank you, one and done. It's connecting them. And Chris, I'm going to forget the specific town, but it really struck me up in Alaska. There was a classroom that reached out and said, had a bunch of students. And so it wasn't just providing them in this 2-room schoolhouse where K through 12 is all in the same building and really all in the same rooms. But you have these high school students. It was here's a subscription to the platform, but here's the experts, including Chris, like here are the people who wrote the books that did the things, and they gave their time to just brainstorm with the students and teach and talk to them. And I think that's the connection, moving it from something you see on TV, something you see in a video game, to saying, oh no, hi, I'm the person behind that. Let me tell you about my journey, but also let me tell you about the ways I approach these problems, or I did this. And it brings it bridges the human divide. And so that it's not just, it's machine technology ideas connecting, that I think is the big difference.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear some more. I mean, Chris, go ahead. But maybe you're going there, but some other example, like the Alaska one, the airport. I mean,
Yeah. So the town that Liz mentioned is Anvik, Alaska. And it's one of those towns you probably haven't heard about it unless you're maybe really familiar with the Iditarod. The dog sled race. And that's relevant because the only way to get to Anvik, Alaska is by plane, boat, or dog sled. Can't take a car there. So very small town, mostly a native population. And the schoolhouse, I think they have one teacher. I know they have one teacher. I think they have anywhere from maybe like 10 to 15 kids at a time. And that's all. That's K-12. That's the whole thing. The whole town is only, 100 or 150 people. That swells a little bit when the Iditarod's coming through for sure, but there's not a lot there. And the teacher found us, got in touch with us and said, hey, I have a couple kids who are really interested in learning about coding. They think that's just something is neat. They want to learn about it. They don't know yet if that's what they want to do for a living, but they're interested in it. And, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to give them the things they need, and certainly don't have the money to buy those things. And, the thing I'll say here is that really in every project we do, we try to help make it happen. We really see ourselves in a supporting role, because the superstar in every one of these projects is the teacher, or in some cases the librarian that we're working with, right? We don't take on a project unless we really have a highly motivated, can-do attitude teacher who's like leading this thing, right? And most of them come to us, right? So a lot of them are certainly, that's certainly kind of the sorts of folks that they are. And teachers are amazing, right? And all of them are amazing. Some of them are tremendously amazing. And so we get to work with a lot of great folks like this. And, this teacher had the initiative to come and reach out to us and say, I want to do this thing. I need the help. Can you help me? I have some ideas of my own. And that's how most teachers don't come to us and say, I want to do X. I don't have anything. They usually say, I want to do X. I've done all this research. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. Sometimes they'll send us an equipment list. Here are the exact things I need, right? And we just need someone to help make it happen. So we kind of entertain both where we can. Sometimes it's just giving them the funding and the things they need, and maybe connecting them to a little bit of curriculum here and there as necessary, or connecting them to other teachers. But a lot of the times it's like, I want to teach my kids programming or robotics or something else, and I have some of these ideas, right? So with this teacher, we took and we basically got together a couple of kits, some like Raspberry Pi, like microcomputers, some curriculum and things to go along with that, a few different books that some they were interested in, some we were interested in that we knew would help them, and sent those there. And sure enough, certainly the 2 or 3 kids who were interested in it started coding, but then all the other ones started seeing them doing it, and now like the whole school's doing it. And this is all the way from like first grade to high school, being interested in it. And the power of that in a town like Envik, Alaska is massive, right? Because you can imagine there's not a lot of industry in a town with 100, 150 people, right? So all these folks are living below the poverty level, certainly the poverty level for this area of Alaska. And so then you imagine a kid learns about programming, gets a coding job. Most of these jobs can now be worked remotely. They can work this job. They have suitable internet in this town, thanks to some satellite connections. And they earn this high salary, and they're going to spend it in the community, right? So at this point, we're not, the whole thing isn't just lifting up one person, one family. It's lifting up the whole town, right? One or two people spending a six-figure salary in this community. That's a game-changing type deal. And it's work I'm certainly very proud to be involved with. And, and you talk about some folks who are just like ingenuity and inventive. I mean, they had an issue in the town for a few days where like the internet just wasn't working, right? And this is a big deal because they rely on the internet for a lot of things up there. And what they realized was that they had this big satellite dish that is what allows their internet to come in. And what they found, it was not working mostly at night. It turns out they had a light that shined on the satellite dish, and the light was drawing bugs to it. And the dense cloud of bugs was so thick that that's what was disrupting.
There was a bug in the system.
It literally
more than one, apparently.
Yeah, and so they figured out, we'll just turn this light off and everything's fine.
Oh wow,
it's great.
That's cool.
I don't know. You mentioned connecting teachers with other teachers. How not relevant? How likely or how often does that happen? Where I can see this kind of network effect of people connecting with each other, and somebody doing coding, another one doing cybersecurity, another one looking at networking or whatever, right?
Yeah. And it, certainly more and more. Before, really up until a few years ago, that was, again, very much me like making these little ad hoc connections here and there. Thanks to Claire coming on board, we're able to formalize a lot more of that. And we've got some better things in place, right? Like, so right off the bat, anybody we fund their project or help them, like we have like a Facebook group that we pull them into, and everybody can kind of communicate openly there. And that's been a good thing. We also still make some targeted connections. Like, we have a teacher who gets like Ozobots for elementary school kids, and they're kind of new to it. We ask them like, hey, do you feel comfortable? Like, or do you want some help? And most of them will say like, we could use all the help we can get. So then we'll connect them to 2 or 3 other teachers that have had the same thing, and we've seen have success with it. Because we do get follow-ups from most of the folks we donate to and work with, in that way. We're also creating some more kind of targeted communities right from the get-go. One of the things that we've been doing this year, we've got a really cool blog post coming out about this next week, is we sponsored 5 schools to start their first ever competitive robotics teams. So there are a lot of these competitions to be found all over the place. The ones we're working with is First Robotics. They have a Lego robotics thing for younger kids, and like a full-blown like robotics competition for older kids where they're building these things from scratch, and the things they come up with are amazing. So we've got these 5 teams. We kind of found them all independently, but now like they're all kind of connected in this group where they can work with each other. They're all going through similar stuff, right? They're all starting these clubs. They have similar issues, even everything down to not just technology, but logistical issues of like, well, do you meet after school? Do you do it as a part of a class? When you recruit, how do you arrange your recruitment? We want to recruit more girls into the program. How are you doing that? And how are you having success? Those sorts of things. So by kind of creating some of these communities intentionally from the get-go, that's been a pretty successful thing. And certainly with these RTF robotics sponsor teams, we're kind of tracking them for the next couple of years and posting like social media updates and blog posts and sharing pictures of how they're doing and their success as they, prepare and get ready to compete and do all those things.
All right. So I'm going to take this and turn it to Liz, because I don't even know how many conversation about diversity and inspiration and role models and mentorship we had in the past, most of the time about cybersecurity. But here is technology. So I talk to people that, end up dreaming about becoming astronauts, becoming a scientist or anything, an inventor. Many times it's because there is somebody that in the family, maybe a person that they know laterally, they inspire, they read a book. Sometimes inspiration can come in many forms. But I think that we can do a lot more to not only to have the teacher that come to you, but to have the kids that go to the teacher to say, I found out about this despite maybe the family not being in the tech business or anything like that, and bring diversity, people with disabilities, and so forth. So I was reading that the organization is quite involved in that as well. So can you give us something about this particular topic?
Oh, absolutely. And one of my favorite projects to watch grow is something, again, going to the assistive technology, because that has been something I have watched even for a long time with friends who worked for the state of Georgia, and all the different research going into, well, okay, how do we close that divide for students or individuals who are capable in every other way, but there's just a gap that needs to be, needs a little bit of help. So that this year, Chris and Claire have started the assistive technology, or really just grown it. But beyond that as well, have worked with, you talked about books, watching even the whole board kind of get together, where different teachers and different experts in education are pointing out, like, hey, this book and this series of books, how can we make these available? Because again, it's not about us coming in and saying, you need this. But as you talked about, Marco, like, it's really the students, the community, the teachers saying, hey, we know where some of the gaps are. Can you just help us fill it? Like, either I need a student that needs to be able to do this. Is there a way to help fund the technology that can help do that? Or, hey, we don't have a lot of women about this. Perhaps you could send someone down up to Toccoa, Georgia, and talk about nerding out, which one of my favorite questions from the students was, of course, we're talking about all kinds of technology, was they wanted to know, I mean, they were some like graphic little minds, because they're like, oh, well, what happens if the plane crashes in the middle of the airport? And, I was like, well, we have sensors, we have this, but they were like ready to, like, everyone's going to die in an explosion. But they want to know what the technology does for that. And I would have, if you had told me going in, oh, good thing you're bringing an aerial map of the airfield, because they're really going to know about the first response, like emergency technology. I would have thought they wanted to know about, like, what are the cool things you can do at the gate, or what can you do here? It's like, no, they'll let you know where they need it or what they're curious about. So, yeah.
I'll add on there, just talking about kind of diversity and bringing more folks in. I mean, I think most folks realize, I mean, if you live in a rural area, you're more likely to be unemployed, you're more likely to get sick, and you're more likely to live in poverty, right? And the thing I tell folks about poverty is that poverty charges interest. If you can't afford to get a toothache looked at, you're going to have to pay for, an extraction or a root canal later. If your air conditioner is leaking or making a noise, can't afford to have it fixed, but you're going to have to pay for a new one or do without later, right? And then, also you're having to take days off work for those things, right? Like, when you're in a state of poverty, all these things compound, and the interest causes you to drive further into that. Now let's consider the different types of folks that live in rural areas. If you're a person of color, or, a person from a native population, or a woman, or anybody from any of these typically underrepresented groups in tech, you got that to deal with too. And, and you got the lack of role models in your life, right? I mean, let's be honest, like, I'm a white dude living in America, so I'm steeped in all sorts of privilege here, but, I certainly didn't have any role models that were like me when I was a kid, in really any way that I could reach out to. I mean, and what happens when you have that happening is, well, your role models become the people you see on TV, and you get all these kind of weirdos who, like, you only see the part of them that, like, they want you to see, and that leads to all kinds of weird stuff politically and all that nonsense. So, role models need to be real people, right? They need to be real people that are accessible. So, when you look at stuff like Liz going to Toccoa, right? So here, all these kids are going to see someone. I mean, think about little girls, right? Little girls who are there, who they meet Liz, who's like in every sense of the word is a badass, and who's a lawyer and does all this tech stuff and knows all this about drones and can talk about planes exploding, like with like knowledge of how this would be handled. Like Liz is a role model, and Liz is a role model for everybody, but particularly for folks who see her and they're like, well, I'm a girl from Georgia, and she kind of looks like me and, sounds like me, right? Like the accent, like she sounds like me. And that's like life-changing stuff for people because they see that and they realize like, my dad's a coal miner and his dad was a coal miner and all the people I know are coal miners or whatever the local industry is, farmers, what have you. And but they see, well, this person does this, so maybe I can do it too. And then that's where potentials for mentorship and opportunities come up because they can talk to Liz or even recognize there are other people who like her or like that and talk to them and say, well, how did you do it? Learn more about their story, right? And certainly Liz's story is not everyone else's story, but they can mimic parts of it and build in their own parts, and that's how careers and lives and families and communities are changed. So I think that's very powerful stuff.
And I love that you're talking about it being relatable, and I don't know if you can expand more on the mentor part of the program, because what you described to me is a place that's safe to think and dream. And in your description, Liz, they had their mind open and they knew what they wanted to ask you, and it threw you off guard, right? It wasn't something you were expecting. I doubt the teachers were expecting that as well. And I guess my point is, it's a safe space for these kids to think and explore and to dream and to see, well, what is this thing in my head? How does it to where I could go, and how can I use technology to get there? And then I presume some of your mentors help have those conversations, right?
Yeah, and I think it's really going back to we're not putting the parameters on their asks. We're not setting like, oh, these are the, this is the lane you have to stay in. Like, we're only going to do this, or we're only going to do that. It's more, you tell us like what strikes your fancy, what does your classroom need? And we'll go from there. Like, we'll help build, but letting them be the drivers. And because once you start putting those, the roadblocks, but also the guardrails and everything in, you're conforming them to the vision that you have. And I don't live in that community. I don't know. I can't presume to, sure, I'll tell you about whatever you want. Like, I can talk to you about jamming. I can talk to you about this. And, oh, you're only in third grade. You don't know. It's like, no, they knew a lot. And we're definitely better little designers and kind of dreamers and makers than I ever had or ever was. So
that's really cool. Yeah.
And everybody is born curious, right? We all have curiosity, the desire to know. As we get on into life, there's things that happen in our lives, and we become adults that kind of stifle our curiosity. But most kids, they haven't experienced that yet. So they're insanely curious, and there's a lot of ways curiosity can be handled by like adults in their life. If a kid is really curious and asks about a thing, well, one is kind of ignorance is I don't know anything about that thing, so sorry, I don't know what to say here. The other is, well, fear, right? When you think about when someone doesn't understand something, they often fear it, and particularly in areas where people are less access to technology, a little bit behind in that technology, they're certainly going to fear it. So, a kid comes up and asks about, well, could someone, use jamming to crash an airplane into an airport or something like that? A lot of adults, and particularly in some rural areas, are going to be like, I don't know what to say to that, but two, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I'm comfortable talking about it. But I know who is comfortable talking about it is Liz Wharton. And and regardless, replace any technology here, whether it's, hacking, like people hacking into things, like, well, I'm comfortable talking about that. I'm not scared of that. I have lots of friends who are not scared to talk about that too, in a constructive way. Because I think we work in the tech industry. I'm not scared of technology. I'm very scared of people and the things they can do with the technology, but I'm not scared of the technology itself. That can be as much a force for good as it can be a force for evil. And so, when you connect folks like us to those folks and those teachers, and we can kind of enlighten them a little bit, and most of them are really open to that sort of thing, and then they can pass that on. And now you've got all these kids who, understand that people can do bad things with technology, but there's also all these tremendous good things that can be done too. And I think that's valuable.
Yeah. Before we wrap, I want to ask you both something that is more the conversation with the adults, and also the time changing. And Sean and I are covering CES in Las Vegas in January, and we went to see what are the topics are interesting, like food technology, agricultural technology, space technology. The technology is everywhere, right? So when you're talking about the mining community or the rural community, what is the approach of people that do work in rural industry that they must know that technology is coming in, and maybe bringing their kids into that, and the teacher playing a big role into it could be even that extra fuel for this to happen. So do you have this kind of conversation too?
Yeah, absolutely. And, really anytime there's a chance to connect, when we're going to teach the kids about technology, it shouldn't just be for technology's sake. Technology really should only exist if it makes people's lives better. Right. And you're going to want to do that in the community of the people that you live with. And there's a lot of ways to approach that. We've had folks who build gardens, and they're using Raspberry Pis to build a sensor that monitors the water level. Right. And then that garden, they can use it, and they learn about gardening, but they also share the food that comes from it with the community. Right. A project comes to mind from last year where we funded a project in New Mexico. And this was on a reservation. And the students were learning about sensors and collecting data and doing things with that. And they took the equipment that we provided and built air quality sensors. And this is really relevant because if you remember, there are a lot of wildfires in the area at the time. So this gave them an opportunity to build these sensors and kind of deploy them around the community. And they were basically able to detect when winds were shifting and the smoke was coming in, and it might cause issues with people with breathing problems and things of that nature. Really valuable. Also just super fun and really neat to build something like that, and be able to detect these smoke particulates that you can't see or yet smell, right? But the machines can. So that had direct, meaningful impact. So anytime there's an opportunity to do something like that, I think that's everything that technology should be, is meaningful and bettering people's lives.
And I think it's a really fascinating point of it that you think, okay, we're coming in, these teachers are asking, these school students need so much, and it's going to be super expensive. And at the end of the day, $5 a student actually covers most of these projects, if not all of them. And so what I admittedly have spent on maybe half a cup of coffee this morning, makes such a big difference. And that's kind of the other thing that's grounding is, by doing this or that, this little bitty thing. And Chris is about to kick off one of the fundraisers, which he's done. How many years now we've done, or Golden
This
Ticket?
is the third year.
And so really engaging the community. So the work that y'all do, with ITSP and all these things, reaching out to the community to kind of re-engage them, to let them know hey, something you're going to take for granted, you're going to think is silly or didn't here's a way for you to help and broaden both that base, but also we didn't all come from a perfect, a townhouse in the middle of hey, remember back home, maybe reach out to your communities where you're from and connect some of these teachers. We all know someone who could benefit from it. And that's just a way to get engaged. So it's not just getting the students engaged, the teachers engaged, but also the technology community. So yes, we will be hitting y'all up to,
well,
help out.
Let's go there. I want to give you some space to talk about the Golden Ticket fundraiser and other things, because I suspect money is key, but there's more to the program than that as well. Perhaps getting the technology straight without having to take money and buy it might be helpful. So maybe
Yeah.
kind of tell us what you need to continue to succeed and grow, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a few things. I mean, certainly, I mean, money is one of the biggest things, right? Liz mentioned it. About $5 a student is what it averages for these projects, and that's because we're donating things not to just an individual student, but to a classroom or the entire school or the library makerspace type deal. So we really promote that sort of access. So that goes a long way. Basically, we have way more applications for funding and help than we can respond to and or at least approve and do something with. So the more money we bring in, the more we can support and the more kids we can reach and impact. It's as simple as that. We are a 501c3, so we're a tax deductible organization. Ruraltechfund.org is the website, which I'm sure will be shared elsewhere. So you can straight up donation. We also have a fundraiser going on right now, which Liz mentioned, called the Golden Ticket Fundraiser. It's kind of Willy Wonka theme. The idea is basically you donate $20. It can be $20 to us, the Rural Technology Fund, or $20 to your local food bank. We do that because RTF is US based and international folks, they may not care. So they may want to donate to their food bank. So either way, donate $20 to RTF or a food bank, forward your receipt to an email address we specify, and you basically get a ticket, an entry into this thing. At the end of it, you can do that as many times as you want. So if you donate $100, you get 5 entries. At the end of this, we draw for this grand winner. The winner gets a whole lot of stuff. They get access to all of my training courses that I teach online. They get access to, they get a signed copy of all the books I've written. They get $500 to spend kind of on a tech book shopping spree, where they can get kind of any tech or career book that they want to get. Our friends at Dragos offered a seat in their course, their ICSOT course that they teach. So lots of things like that. It's a tremendous amount of knowledge and stuff, which kind of is in line with everything else we do. So folks can enter that through December 20th. It's ruraltechfund.org/golden ticket. Has all the details. Also has a picture of me wearing a Willy Wonka suit where I look absolutely ridiculous, and I can't believe Claire talked me into doing that. But these are the things we do for the organizations we love. So that's money certainly helps, and we need to raise money to keep doing what we're doing. Second thing, people want to help who can't contribute money, but they want to contribute time. Well, volunteers are always helpful, particularly when it comes to things like mentoring, doing things like what Liz did, where she went to the classroom and talked to a career day. We do a lot of that virtually now. So that's helpful, but certainly when we have someone who can come in and take physical things with them or go to an area. And again, no matter where you live, you're probably 30, 45 minutes away from a rural area. We maintain kind of a database of that. So if folks are interested in that, basically email me. We have you fill out a form, and we just maintain that database. And when opportunities arise, we connect you with teachers and make those things happen. So there are opportunities for volunteering in that sort of way. The last thing, kind of the third of these 3 points, is if you know a teacher in a rural area, and we mostly focus on teachers, but we also do this work in rural public libraries as well. So if you know a teacher, a librarian who wants to do these things and needs help, please send them our way. Our application process is very simple. We don't keep folks waiting for long. We don't make them jump through a bunch of hoops or red tape. It's very simple, and they can apply, and we can have discussions with them, and we do respond to everyone who applies. And that's both on the rural technology side and the assistive technology side for kids with disabilities. So a lot of those will be like speech language folks or special education teachers, things of that nature.
And one of the things to keep in mind for anyone who's contemplating participating in the Golden Ticket, you don't have to keep the books yourself. Pay it forward. If you think, oh, I've already taken all these courses, well, you can donate that course to, I don't know, perhaps maybe the Black Girls in Cyber, or Black Girls Who Hack, or Marcos on any of the projects y'all have worked with. You might know some people who could benefit and couldn't already, pay for it themselves. Pay it forward. Just for $20, you get to know, what you can do. And this is also where Marcos, Sean, as people who work in the industry and get to know a lot about technology, you talking to some students and getting them excited about, hey, here's how to do what we do. we help run one of the, premier podcasts that, stuff like that you don't think necessarily, oh, that's like, I'm glad someone else is volunteering or donating or doing stuff. This really isn't for me, but it is. And that's how we like to connect those dots, not only with the students, but also with the community.
Well, I'm going to make it.
Students want to know about.
I'm going to make an open invitation here then to come back in the new year, bring a couple of students, maybe even a teacher that you work with, and we can have a nice conversation, because I'm actually part of an organization called the Mentor Project. So I learned a few things about that, and there is unbelievable people there that contribute to that. And it's just like one little thing, right? It's kind of like you have a platform, please use it right. Okay, you have power in there. Even if you change one person's life, it's a conversation worth to have. So I would love to bring some kids and ask them this question, right? So that's gonna happen. It's let's make this plan. And Sean, I think the call to action has been done. We will have notes to connect with you guys and to the organization. And of course, we're going to post this on social media. So follow Redefining Technology. The goal is exactly this: use technology for good, not just do it because we can, but because there is a reason and we can change lives. So really honored to have you guys on, and looking forward to have you again.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate the opportunity.
CrowdSec, the collaborative and open source cybersecurity solution. Analyze behaviors, respond to attacks, and share signals across the community for free. Let's make the internet safer together. Learn more at crowdsec.net.
Devo unlocks the full value of machine data for the world's most instrumented enterprises. The Devo Data Analytics Platform addresses the explosion in volume of machine data and the crushing demands of algorithms and automation. Learn more at devo.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Redefining Technology Podcast. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share ITSPmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.